let's talk a little bit about your patent portfolio and preclinical study work. What currently you're working with as far as DMT analogs, such as I said before, 5-MeO-DMT or other types of tryptamines as well. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
5-methoxy-DMT. People often call it 5-MeO.
Do they?
5-MeO-DMT. Just
thank you. Well, I'm glad that can be a little bit shorter when trying to explain it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 5-MeO. Yeah, so we've got a pretty extensive patent portfolio. The bulk of our portfolio are tryptamine and psychedelic tryptamine based. We've got 26 applications relating to psychedelic tryptamines. They are largely focused on drug substances and drug products related to DMT.
Okay.
So that's without the DMT molecule, without any functional changes to it. But we have developed a technology using deuterium, which is an isotope as opposed to an analog of hydrogen, that helps us change the half-life of the drug and change the biological properties. And two of our preclinical compounds, SPL028 and SPL029, are based on that technological platform. We have a number of patent applications in relation to more to kind of substituted and less well understood compounds, and none of those are published yet. So it's a part of the story that we'll have to tune in on in another episode.
Yeah, it makes sense. So if I'm learning more about the industry and a lot of these are patents that you're focusing on, and I want to understand, why was the focus pertaining to this primarily when developing the patents, and what does this all mean, let's say, in the next 3 to 6 months for people that are invested within the company?
Well, okay, so my background is in patent law. I spent 10 years working in the pharmaceutical sector,
okay.
Both building and navigating around IP strategies. So I look at it from both sides, and we always have two IP focuses on our drug development. We build drugs based on known active ingredients because we want a clear supply chain for the essence of the medicine. And we also look to develop products that have something proprietary about them. So we look to bring new, innovative medicines, and they will typically have solved a particular technical problem that gives us a patent position. And the development of DMT was largely around the fact that there was an opportunity to optimize the synthetic process for making it. Mm-hmm. So we developed a very cheap and scalable synthesis using very environmentally friendly raw materials.
Right.
That synthesis also allowed us to develop our deuterium enrichment technology because there's kind of a dovetail in the process, and that basically set the kind of it set the scene for our technical development.
Right.
And
yeah, I wanted to ask one thing. It's important to learn too, as we're based here in North America. What's the overall general consensus of psychedelics within the UK? You're a UK based company, and I know 100% you're obviously focusing on a global opportunity here. It's not just within the UK, but as you get more and more established, how's legislation moving along there? And do you feel there are advantages when it comes to research where you're based compared to other parts in the world?
I mean, two very good questions. So in fact, several of the world's leading institutes for delivering psychedelic assisted therapy are based here in London.
Of course.
Imperial, who we're partnered with for our phase 1/2A, and King's College London, who we're not partnered with, but my wife works there, and I would hope one day we might be able to partner with them.
That's what she told you, right?
She's a philosopher, so
right.
But London is a very, very dense center for kind of understanding and research in this area. A slightly more boring but quite relevant factor for investors is that the UK has significant R&D tax incentives for companies like us. And as a virtual company, the bulk of what we spend our money on is research and development. So our capital is very efficiently deployed.
It's great.
And thirdly, a lot of the infrastructure necessary to run a virtual pharmaceutical company has been enabled by the legacies of big pharmaceutical companies that that grew up here. So AstraZeneca, GSK, Pfizer had a big plant. These companies have now created an amazing ecosystem of contract research organizations and contract development and manufacture organizations that virtual companies like us rely upon. And the third and final point with respect to legislation is that we actually have quite a progressive approach when it comes to handling or managing new compounds that could have abuse potential. So
how so?
Well, in the 70s, we all know that the UN, in their infinite wisdom, decided to schedule a whole class of compounds that very little was known about, and deemed them unusable for medicine. In the UK, that spawned the Misuse of Drugs Act, and DMT and psilocybin and a whole bunch of other potential medicines are Schedule 1 under that act. And there are a number of drugs that have been discovered since that have just as much potential for harm. And the government spent a long time working out how to address that. What they did was they introduced a second act, the Psychoactive Substances Act. And that basically deems anything that could be psychoactive as banned for recreational use.
Right.
But there is a specific carve out for medical use, and there's a specific carve out for licensed medicines. So what that allows is an alternative framework for new psychoactive compounds. Problem is, of course, DMT and psilocybin are in the old act.
Right.
So there's still a body of work to do to convince legislators to shift.
How is that pacing along? Do you see that changing relatively soon?
It could move fast. It could move fast. I'm fortunate enough to sit on the working group for psychedelic medicines. And the chair of that group, David Nutt, is very vocal in kind of lobbying various government individuals, and we could see change with respect to scheduling of psilocybin and other psychedelics within this parliament, perhaps.
That's great. So do you see, if and when that does happen, besides all that, how much growth do you see and how much excitement, I should say momentum, you think over the course of the back end of 2021 and going into 2022 overall as a company, as you look to obviously forward your message to the investor base?
Well, we are at a point of growth. We've got the funds necessary to take all three of our projects into the clinic, and possibly all three all the way to proof of concept if each of them are looking promising. And as a phase 2B company with multiple products in the pipeline, I think we'll be considered top tier company for development of psychedelic assisted therapy.
It's great. Listen, I know you're busy. Appreciate you connecting with me. Keep up the great work, and let's definitely keep in touch as we follow this story very closely over time.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me, Chad.
All right. Thanks, Peter.